I wanted to bring this up because we're getting some more reports out of what is that called? The OIG. What does that actually mean? The Office of Inspector General. There we go. So let me pull this up. So there's been a lot of reports where the Office of Inspector General is basically like, what's that called when you look over something and you investigate it and it's like an audit. An audit.
Investigate? No.
Yeah, they're like basically auditing SLS a lot lately, and we're seeing a lot of these reports come out. And one of them is about this tower here. There's the mobile launch tower, or the what do they call it? They actually call it the just a mobile launch tower. So this is the first one they built, and they built this for the Block 1B basically, which is or the Block 1, which is what's currently being built for the first couple missions. And then they were working on building a second one for the Block 1B, which are slightly taller. Here's the thing. They basically came out saying that the OIG noted that so far it's cost at least $927 million for this tower.
For the tower.
For the tower. Oh, gosh. And which is like way more. So then, okay, for the, which was $234 million for the development of the original tower that this was built around for the Antares or the Ares rocket. And then $693 million for SLS related designs and modification. So the original tower was slated to cost $234 million. Because they've modified it to work for SLS, that's cost $693 million.
And how much is a Starship launch? Just one launch going to cost?
Likely $5 million. Well, aspirationally $5 million. I'm going to go ahead and go on record and say at first, while the market's used to paying $100, $200, $400 million for a service like that, they'll charge $100 million for a service like that.
So you still, at this price, could launch it 10 times.
Yeah.
For the price of the tower.
For the price of just the tower that hasn't done anything yet. And they're trying to build a second one.
And they brought the pie charts.
They brought in pie charts. There you go, man. Are you happy?
That's how you know they're trying to lie to you. If anyone shows you a pie chart, they're trying to confuse you. That's how it works, just to be clear.
But look at this. Design errors made up 39% of the cost. Design errors. What? A lot of this, though, is kind of related because they have changed the SLS so much and had to go through. Anytime the SLS changes, their tower has to change. And or like, if SLS is like, oh, by the way, I guess we're not going to do the 1B. We're just going to fly a couple with 1A or the Block 1. Okay, let's change the tower. And like every time it changes, they have to like re-outfit the stupid tower. So here you can see Block 1 versus Block 1B. 1B's taller, stretch tanks. But here's the other thing. So, okay, basically, this sucks. Like, we're just throwing money at a tower that might only be used a handful of times. As Seth says in our Discord, the kicker is it's only going to be used for 4 launches at best. Yeah. Like, it's currently scheduled for 4 launches.
So that's what, 150 million per launch or something like that?
Right.
Just for the tower.
Well, it's 250 basically.
Well, and it probably costs money to operate the tower on top of it, right? To like
it's probably
move it or something or whatever it does,
So in other words, $250,000 are going away every time. And remember, if you the Block 1 version can only do about 95 tons to orbit. If you threw away a Falcon Heavy, it can do what, like 60 tons or something? So there's very few missions that actually require 95 tons to low Earth orbit. In other words, and a Falcon Heavy, I think you can buy expended versions of it for just over $100 million.
Yeah.
So the tower alone is over double that. Forget the $2 billion rocket.
This reminds me of this gap in technology. Reminds me of when the cloud kind of came into play in the tech world, and all of us working in tech. All of a sudden, it didn't cost $6,000 to add 2 gigabytes of hard drive space
right
to a server, which like seriously, that's what it would cost. And we all were like, my phone has 128 gigabytes. How the hell can this be? And then the cloud came out and it was Amazon, and it's like, oh, you want more storage? Just click here 5 times, and it's $2.50 a month for 500 gigabytes.
Right.
You're like, oh God. Yeah, everything is gonna go that way very soon.
Yep. So and that's basically what more reports are saying. So this is so we had that previous article from NASA Spaceflight, but Spaceflight now has an article kind of going over the overall costs of SLS in general, and basically it's getting pushed back. Even the test run is getting pushed back for the tank. It just keeps slipping in schedule, and every time it slips in schedule, Boeing actually makes more money.
Of course.
Because it's cost plus contracting. So it's insane. I can't believe this is still getting funded at this point. A year ago I was still like, okay. Actually, probably even in November when we're finally seeing stuff happen, I was like, finally, we're seeing some stuff happen. I'm excited. This is what SLS needs. But when it all comes together now, as of December 2019, NASA had obligated $14.8 billion on the SLS program and is expected to spend a total of $17.4 billion by Artemis 1 launch date. Be referring to no earlier than November 2020, which no way will the first SLS launch in November 2020. So basically they're saying now it'll be like $18.3 billion because it'll slip to at least spring 2021. Over 2 years later than its initial planned launch date, with total SLS program rising to $18.3 billion. So if a second launch Artemis date slips to 2023, the additional cost driving the SLS program will be $22.8 billion just for 2 rockets.
And you wonder why lawmakers and taxpayers are skeptical of bailing out companies like Boeing when you see this kind of crap.
I'm going to go on record and say I'm over it. I'm officially over it.
Time to call it?
I think it's just, at this point, there's no way. There's no way it'll make sense. You know, and we keep talking about going back to the moon sustainably. That's one of the things Jim Bridenstine keeps saying. Yes, I agree. What is sustainable about, even when things are all set up for SLS, about a $2 billion launch? How is that sustainable? When we could do that same mission profile with literally 2 or 3 Falcon Heavies that cost $150 million? So at most, it's 25% of the price, and it's readily available today with no more development. The only thing they'd have to develop is some systems for in-orbit docking. That stuff's honestly, at this point, trivial compared to fixing another launch structure, continuing to test this mega rocket that has no real destination and no real purpose.
I feel like when New Glenn and Starship become a thing, like it would be asinine to even consider that anymore.
What does he mean by sustainable?
Obviously, like, going to the moon will never be sustainable-ish, but we're trying to make improvements over the Apollo era, because the Apollo era, we're just throwing money to just have a genitalia measuring contest, basically, right? And that wasn't sustainable, which is why the Apollo program ended after Apollo 17. It was like, we can't really keep doing this.
You mean like as a business revenue sustainable?
Well, that's way in the future, but as far as like a government program still, and exploration and scientific, there's still things we can be doing that can make it so it could actually be profitable to have probes on the moon, producing fuel, producing, aluminum. Literally, the book Artemis is like a pretty legitimate idea of a way that could eventually become in space resources could be worth a lot of money. But we're not even talking about that. We're just talking about like taking some missions to the moon, getting humanity back on the moon, and in a form that's not like, billions and billions and billions of dollars a launch. And yet we're talking about using a rocket that costs $2 billion a launch. Right. That's not sustainable. If you want to talk sustainability, we talk about getting it down to like, where a launch is not much more than going up to the International Space Station today. Because people don't really bat an eye at the cost of the International Space Station, right? But obviously, if we start spending $2-3 billion per launch, and we do that twice a year to go to the moon, people are going to be like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry, but that cost has to come way down. It has to be well under $1 billion before people would have any enthusiasm about it and not just think it's a giant waste of taxpayer money.
Right. You can think of a lot of things to do with that money that could fix things locally down here on Earth.
And especially with things happening the way they are right now, there's going to be a lot of economic stimulus that's going to be required to keep the worst effects from happening.
I mean, Yeah, this may be the nail in the coffin here for SLS then, won't it? I mean, like some of the people, the economists that are talking about the impact to the global economy from the event happening right now, they're talking. I mean, you know, some people are more sensational than others, but definitely back to the Great Recession era hit, as well as back, you know, people are saying Great Depression type era stuff, and you're just looking at it going, man, that's so. A lot of things are going to be slowing down here, and with something like this, you know, the outlook here is not very great for it.
Right. I think this will be one of those things that gets finally put on the shelf, and it'll be.
Yeah, you look at it and go, it makes sense. Like,
yeah. At this point, I don't know who is going to be approving this rocket that is still so far behind and so far over schedule, and so far over price, and with no real intended purpose other than trying to do the Artemis program within a potential 2-year term for a president, you know, which trust me, I am Mr. Please take us back to the moon. I want humans walking on the moon again now, like yesterday, please. But now just seeing this all come out, seeing this all really be drilled in, it just makes no sense to do it with SLS. I'm sorry. And I've tried, and I love I've wanted to see it fly. I've been a card carrying sunk cost fallacy because we've been so far into this thing that I've wanted to see the stupid thing fly. But I wanted that like last year. You know, I wanted that maybe at the end of this year, but slipping into next year and with another like billion down the drain, I'm sorry. It just does not, it no longer makes sense. Think about what Blue Origin and SpaceX could do with $1 billion cash injection into their programs. It'd be insane. And I know that's not always the way this stuff works. And that's, you know, people always ask me that. They're always like, why don't they just give that money to SpaceX and Blue Origin? You know, like, it doesn't work that way. It's not going to go back into the system like that. If it's not used for this, it will likely just get totally cut from NASA's budget, right? But at this point, it's not really going to NASA. It's not really going to anything.
I mean, throw it at the STEM projects that they cut, you know?
Right.
What was it, like? It went from $100 million in STEM funding to zero. Yeah, come on.
But that's the problem, is it won't likely get redistributed. You know, that's just not how that stuff works.
You could be like, look, SLS, you could do without some of this. Let's make sure future generations give a crap. Okay?
Right.
And let's get them excited about this and give them the education and the things they need. Mark Rober can only do so much to get the kids in, you know?
But let me be clear. A lot of people were saying, well, let's just fund Starship, and Starship could do the Artemis mission by 2024, which is what they're trying to target. Personally, even if they had all the money in the world thrown at Starship right now, I don't think it is going to be human ready for moon missions by 2024, personally. I mean, but I think it would be faster and quicker than SLS potentially, and definitely cheaper. But there's a lot of things that would need to go into certifying that for human flight, a lot of practice runs. Although at this pace...
I feel like money isn't the problem with Starship.
Right.
You know, it's not like just throwing more money at it would solve all the problems. It's just these things take time, you know?
Yep. Hey, thanks for checking us out, guys. I hope you enjoyed this clip from our podcast.
We do a weekly show here on YouTube, so make sure to subscribe to Our Ludicrous Future, where we discuss all the things that are going to make our future totally ludicrous.
You can join us here on YouTube or at any of your favorite podcast places. Plus, if you want to get some behind-the-scenes stuff and join a cool community, you can help support the channel at patreon.com. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, guys.